Hello, and welcome to the Film School Snobs podcast. I'm Alexander Zapata,
And I'm Jalen Michael.
and this is now episode 15 of the Film School Snobs. Jalen, how's everything going? How was your first week of school?
Yeah, first week of classes. Yeah, it's pretty calm. The calm before the storm, before it gets very hectic this semester. But we're back here, and hopefully we'll continue thriving throughout this semester with this show. So,
Same. Yeah, calm before the storm, pretty slow week. And so, hopefully, the school year doesn't get too bad.
hmm
But, who knows? Um, So this week on the Film School Snobs, because it's been a slow week and it chapter 2 comes out the following week, we decided we would go back and review it, the 2017 movie.
Yep.
So Jalen, you said you've read the book, right?
Yep.
And have you ever seen the original 1990 miniseries?
Yeah, when I was younger, but I honestly don't remember too much from it. Just like little clips here and there that I remember. But I did read the book and I have seen the miniseries. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, so you automatically know more about it than I do.
uh, you
Um,
did you see the miniseries?
I never saw the miniseries.
Good.
And I've never read the book, although I do know like a little bit about like what's gonna happen in chapter 2, which we won't spoil here.
Mm,
I also know it ties into the Dark Tower, which like everything ties into Dark Tower because like
yeah.
all of his books are connected. All of Stephen King's books are connected.
Right.
Um, and so going into I remember 2017 came around, the trailers dropped, and everybody was hyping this up. I saw the trailer, I'm like, yeah, it looks good, it looks okay. It wasn't working for me the same way it was working for everyone else when the trailers
Mm-hmm.
dropped. And so when the movie finally dropped, everybody's like, "Oh, this movie's so great! It's so good!" Everybody loved it,
Yeah.
like the critics and the audience.
Right.
And I saw it, and I just didn't get the hype. I wouldn't go out of my way to say it's a terrible movie, but I don't think it's a particularly good one for reasons I'll get into later. So Jalen, what were your initial thoughts going into it when you first saw it in 2017?
Yeah. Well, I guess I definitely do agree. Like when it first came out, especially its opening weekend, I remember it's very overhyped. People said, "No, it's the scariest horror movie ever." And I was like, "Not really," but just as a fan of the novel, I definitely appreciated how close of an adaptation it was, and just like overall, just how I felt about the film. I thought it was a pretty fun adventure movie. I think if looking in as it as a horror film, it probably wouldn't have probably doesn't live up to those scariest film of all time expectations, but I think for the story that it told and how it told that story, I definitely appreciated it when it first came out.
Mm. Yeah. So this is gonna be another one where you and I just disagree. Yeah. Just I think the thing that didn't work for me, the main thing that didn't work for me is just it wasn't scary at all.
mm,
And I don't know, it's kind of frustrating when like main reason I don't find this movie scary is because I feel like there's never any times like build up any suspense.
yeah.
Where instead the filmmakers just have Pennywise jump out of the camera and start shouting at the kids, and the kids are like, ah! Like it's nothing but loud noises, and I'm like, how is this scary? It's just really annoying.
I see where you're coming from with that one. And before we do get into, I do want to say like uh, I know we've had our disagreements with like films like Spider-Man and like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This isn't like one of those movies where I'm like really, really in love with. It's just a movie I think it's pretty good. But I will say like to your point with the horror elements not really being actually scary. I think the director, which I'm looking at his name, Andy Muschietti, is his name.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think he does a pretty decent job at like building tension through his scenes. It's just that punchline where you go in for the jump scare. It's most of the times it's not that effective, but everything before that, I do think it's filmed pretty well and
Mm.
gets that thrill and that tension built up for the whole
Well,
scene.
you see, I'm typically not the biggest fan of jump scares, but I do respect it when it's used well.
Mm,
Like I like a lot of James Wan's movies, The Conjuring, the Insidious movies. And he uses a lot of jump scares, but he utilizes them in a way where they stick with you.
right.
Where he takes his time to build up the tension, and then like some kind of monster will pop out of you. I
hmm
feel like with with it's just like the tension really isn't there for me when I'm watching the movie. And then finally Pennywise jumps out, makes his loud noises, and then it all falls flat. So maybe
Yeah,
if they spent more time building up that tension and then paying it off with a jump scare, I would have liked it more. But it's not the slow burn I'm looking for when I watch horror movies.
I get that. I think because when I think about like the horror elements, and I just got finished rewatching it like a few minutes ago before we started.
Same here.
Um, but
Yeah,
like
film school snobs doing stuff last minute.
yeah, but yeah, like there's like certain scenes that where it's like the movie overall, like you said, it's not very scary at all. But there are certain scenes that did stick with me afterwards. Particularly, I did appreciate like the setups of each character, how they go into each person's fear, and their encounters with the it entity. So you had Eddie with the leper, you had Beverly with the blood in the drain, Mike with the burning people in the burnt down house. Like I felt like all those scenes were definitely that was tension building up. So then when the group all comes together having to face Pennywise, uh, the I would say like the punchline, like where you're supposed to get that big scare. For the most part, it does fall flat. But then you get scenes like the projector scene where it's like the way it was built up, and then you get that final jump scare. It's like, oh god, that really is effective, at least in my opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it gets. The other thing too with the jump scares, it just gets a bit too goofy for my taste. Which like
mm.
it's a clown, so I guess it's supposed to be a little goofy. Um, but I don't know. They just go a bit too above and beyond with some of it, in my opinion. One thing I will say is that Bill Skarsgård, he gives a fantastic performance as
Oh
Pennywise,
yeah,
and
definitely.
I love all the makeup. I love all the special effects they use on him. It's
Mm.
all fantastic, and he does really good. And like he does stick around with you. His performance does stick around.
Right.
Um, and so I feel like a lot of it just falls on like the filmmaking and how there just wasn't enough tension built up, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's fit. But I think for me, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but yeah, the horror aspects of the film's probably not that well utilized as it could have been. But the thing I appreciated the most about this movie, and when I say it's very faithful to the book, is that it's honestly like, yeah, it's gonna be marketed as a horror movie because yeah, it pretty much is. But the story itself, it's a coming of age story, just in the mask of a horror movie. And I definitely think like that those coming of age elements, revolving around the losers club and them growing up, uh, I think that's very effective in this too because I'm not a big fan of the horror genre as a whole. There's certain people like Jordan Peele and I don't remember the guy who did The Witch and doing The Lighthouse now. Um,
Robert Eggers or something like that.
right, Robert Eggers, right. So there's definitely a lot of great horror filmmakers this day. But the genre overall, for what it falls flat for me, is that the characters never really stick with me. So when the tragic stuff starts happening to them, that's supposed to be scary. I'm not really moved by it because I don't really care. Usually, it's an annoying teenager or clueless people. With this story, you have these kids who they each have their own backgrounds, their own fears, their own setups and motivations. So when the stuff starts happening to them, you do get some emotional payoffs, and you actually do care what happens to them at the end of it all.
This is where we're going to come to our second disagreement because I personally found a lot of the character development to be really poorly done.
Mm.
Just none of these characters really stuck around with me in terms of like personality. The one character I will say that stuck around with me, Beverly, I really enjoyed her character.
Mm.
And the big brother, whose name I forget, the one who lost his little brother and he started
Bill.
Bill, there we go, that's his name.
Mm.
I really enjoyed his character too. But outside of those two, I just didn't really find myself latching on to any of the other characters. You have the kid who lost his family in a fire. He literally gets barely any dialogue.
Yeah, it's like
You
that in the book too.
really?
Yeah, that's actually like. Well, I'll talk about it later.
Hmm. Well, I wonder if it's just a racial thing then. Because yeah, he doesn't get any. He barely gets any dialogue.
Mm.
And same thing, just like with a lot of the characters, where I feel like maybe this, chapter two is almost 3 hours long, and maybe this would have benefited from that too, so we can get more time just like know these characters because I feel like I barely know some of them.
Yeah, well, I think with a lot of the characters outside of Beverly and Bill, because they were the two that I was referring to the most when I say emotional payoffs. Because yeah, like you were talking about, Bill starts off the story with him losing his brother, and that's not a spoiler. I don't think that's kind of like the whole premise of the movie.
Yeah, it's in the
But
trailer, so.
yeah, and
And plus, this movie's been out for 2 years. It's like the highest
yeah,
grossing horror movie.
yeah, I think you guys would be all right if you got spoiled by it. But yeah, and then with Beverly, her whole backstory dealing with her father and having to overcome these labels about her that's been passed around the town. But then I also think like characters like Richie, who he's supposed to be like the tough bravado dude of the group, always foul mouth and oh, I only care about myself and I'm the big bad guy. I'm the big bad boy rather. But then by the end of it all, you see is like, oh, he's a dude that he's very loyal to his friends, and I definitely knew quite a few people like that in my friends group when I was growing up. Um, yeah. So speaking on the character that you were saying, Mike, um, is very similar in the book as well. He doesn't get a lot to do. In fact, I believe they added stuff in this movie for him, which kind of shows like just his development in the book overall, how that was.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do think like they could have done more with Mike, considering he's the only, well, as far as we know, the only black family that lives in this town of Derry of theirs. And you have the bully coming in to say, I need you to get out of my town, but clearly it's a racial thing. They just never really tackle it head on. Um, that's something I did wish they did, but even I think he gets a pretty sad backstory that elevates his character a bit from what it was in the source material.
Mhm. So, in the source material, do they ever mention his like family being burned or anything?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the whole catalyst for his particular fear.
Mhm.
Um, because the whole thing with his parents being burnt in a house, and he was pretty helpless. He couldn't do anything but just get out. Um, and that's kind of like pretty much similar to Bill, where he kind of feels that guilt. That's also been weighing with Mike's whole character.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've always been interested in reading the book. Just because like I said, this the movie it really didn't satisfy me.
Mm,
And I've never seen the miniseries, but I hear a lot of mixed things about it. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's really good," or "It's really bad and really goofy."
hmm
I still have yet to watch it, so I probably should get on that someday. Um, so just overall, I still don't get the hype 2 years later. I rewatched it right before we started recording, and I just don't know why everybody loved it at the time.
Mm, yeah, that's fit. Um, yeah, I mean, for me, it's like it's an enjoyable, fun movie. I probably, if I'm in the mood to be scared, I wouldn't put this one on. It'd probably be like far down my list as far as actual scares. But as far as just a fun adventure, coming of age story, I definitely recommend it. Um, and just as a fan of the book, because, and there's the thing about Stephen King fans is that they're kind of like, I mean, I think it's like with any fandom, they're pretty diehard for them, for
Mhm.
their overlord. But there's a lot of stupid things that Stephen King wrote in the It book, and a lot of things that this movie cut out that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah,
Um, I'm pretty sure you probably heard about one particular scene that I don't even want to mention in fear of getting demonetized here.
yeah. Everybody talks about that, and like
Yeah.
why would you even put that in the book in the first place?
Listen, man, he was on a lot of cocaine back in the '80s, so
Was he?
yeah.
Was I didn't even know Stephen King did coke. I knew he was an alcoholic. I didn't know he did coke.
Yeah, but at least this is what I read. I don't know how true it is, but he is very influenced on drugs and the making of these stories. And you gotta, I mean, you can kind of see it. To come up with the type of stories he does. It's you gotta be messed up with something.
Mhm.
um, but yeah, the movie. I think it makes some stylistic choices to differ itself from the book, and I'm pretty excited to see what they do with chapter two.
Yeah. So just as someone who has read the book, and I haven't read the book, but I do know the deal with Pennywise.
Mm,
What are your expectations going to the second one? Do you expect them to cut certain things out of the book again? Do you expect them to elaborate on certain things? Just what do you expect going in?
yeah, well, considering that this one's 3 hours long, I'm definitely if they don't cut anything out, or if they do cut things out, then it's probably gonna be a lot that they add to it. I'm probably in the minority here, but honestly, I might not be. But the adults part of the book, um, because the book actually jumps between the kids and the adults, but I always found the adult parts kind of lacking. Um, just as far as storytelling goes, it's kind of uninteresting from what they have to do and where that story goes from there.
Hmm.
Um, and just because of the type of person I am, I don't think it's not a spoiler. You've seen it in the chapter one, but it is a cosmic entity, and they definitely dive deeper into the whole cosmic thing about it. Um,
Mm.
and I think with horror fans, like if you're still expecting this to be extremely scary, I think you'll be left disappointed. But as far as like an adventure goes, I think it'll probably live up. There's definitely some scenes I saw in the trailer that is like I remember that, and that's how I hoped it would look. Um, Something that the miniseries kind of failed to do, from what I remember. But yeah, I think they'll definitely go a lot bigger than what they did in part one, just because the nature of the story. But I don't think it'll be any scary. I think just the sci-fi aspects of it, it's what's going to be explored more.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I find it interesting because a lot of the stuff Stephen King writes, you'd expect it to be more paranormal and supernatural, when in
Hmm.
fact it's more cosmic. Because like I said, a lot of it ties into his Dark Tower series, and
Right.
that leans more on the sci-fi side of things than it does the fantasy. Which
Right.
I've only read like the first half of the first book,
Hmm.
and I really liked it, and I'm really disappointed like they messed up the movie.
Still haven't seen it, to be
Don't.
honest with you.
It's not even terrible. It's just incredibly generic and boring. I think
Yeah,
that's the
that's
worst
worse.
thing.
Yeah.
I'd rather take a movie that's I like I've always said this ever since Justice League came out. I'd rather
Hmm.
take something like Batman v Superman, which is an utter mess, but it
Hmm.
tried to be something unique, rather than Justice League when it's an utter mess, but it tries to be the most generic and safe thing possible.
Safe. Yeah. I agree 100%. And even just like if it's a bad movie, then it's like at least, so bad you can have fun with. But if it's a bad, boring movie, it's like I don't ever want to think about this movie again.
Exactly. Like, well, I dislike Batman v Superman with a passion, but like, especially like after seeing Justice League, I wouldn't say I liked it more, but I'll just say I appreciated what it was going for more.
Mhm.
It's still garbage, but at least it tried.
Did you ever bother watching the extended cut?
I'm not gonna lie, I was that guy at the time. I was that guy who had to watch it a million times to talk about why I hated it so much. I would never do something like that nowadays. Nowadays, I'll just be like, I hated it. I'm never talking about it again or watching it again.
Hmm.
But yeah, I did watch the extended cut. All 3 hours of it wasn't any better.
Yeah, I never saw it, but yeah, seeing Batman versus Superman twice was more than enough for me. And I probably don't hate it as much as you do, but it's definitely not something I would revisit.
Yeah, they're moving on to better things, thank God. So,
Yeah.
so moving on from our tangent about Stephen King and DC. So from here, let's talk about what we saw this week. So, Jalen, I'm gonna let you go first. What did you see this week?
Yeah, so I actually finally get to do my review for one of Alex's top picks of the year, Midsummer. It's a movie I had a lot of hype coming into it. I've heard a bunch of great things. I read the script months ago, and just reading that it freaked me out. And I was excited to see what they did on the big screen. And I will say, for the most part, I think it's definitely a great movie. It's very well made. It's a very calculated movie, I would say. It's just not something I would particularly take interest in watching ever again. Um, yeah, it's just I don't know. It's not my type of movie. I wrote that on my letterbox review. It's just I think as a horror movie, I appreciate how it builds up its tension in its scenes and the horrific images once it finally gets to those certain scenes. I think Ari Aster, he does a very great job at that. But just the overall story, especially at 2.5 hours, is just so meandering. It's like I really do not feel like sitting through this ever again. I'll probably YouTube certain scenes, particularly the climax of the film and the cliff scene. But other than that, I walked out of this movie not really caring for most of the other stuff in here. Um, I will say the performances also I think were very great. Florence Pugh, uh, who yes, she's gonna be in Black Widow. I'm glad she's actually getting more work uh, after this movie because she was hands down to me the best part about this movie. Um, just particularly to that last shot of her, I thought was like, oh shoot, like this is chilling, and she's pulling it off so effectively. But yeah, other than that, I think it's just a lot of scenes really just to get a reaction out of the audience, but doesn't really add anything to the overall story. Um, yeah, I really don't have much else to say that you didn't already say in your review. Not that I hated it, and I didn't even dislike it, but yeah, it's just not my thing. I don't think it'll make my top anything by the end of the year.
Jalen, I think it's time I put you in a bear suit.
That was pretty cool, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, another time when we're agreeing to disagree. But yeah, I'm glad you got to see the movie though. Finally. I'm looking forward to seeing the director's cut. I'm planning on seeing it sometime this week.
Cool.
Yeah, let's take a long movie and make it even longer. That's been the obsession of late. Make Endgame 3 hours long, The Irishman 3.5 hours,
That's
It
just
almost 3 hours.
I mean, I'm one of those people who do like to get their bang for their buck. So if you're gonna entrap me in AC at a theater for 3 hours, then just make it a good one.
Mm. Yeah, you see, I'm the complete opposite. I'm not the biggest fan of super long movies. That being said, I say that while like Lord of the Rings are like my favorite movies of all time. Some of my favorites. Like I love Seven Samurai. I love like Wolf of Wall Street and Silence. I like there are a lot of great long movies. It's just I am very impatient, and I especially as of late, it's hard for me to like sit through such a long movie.
I get
So
you.
yeah, like Endgame was easy for me because I was in theaters. Like if I'm not in theaters and like focus solely on the screen,
Yeah.
then it's really hard. It's hard for me to like sit at home and watch something because then like 5 minutes in, I was like get up and do this or get up and do that.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, and that's why I think we said this before too. When Roma came out, I really wish that I actually had went to see it in theaters because I watched it on Netflix when it came out that December, and I love the movie. It was in my top two last year, but while I was watching it, I was like, oh shoot, I actually have to go do something. Let me pause the movie real quick, and I had to watch it in like 3 different sittings rather than just getting the whole experience at once.
Same.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I
and the
definitely
worst
agree with
part
you.
is Netflix just like pulled out of all like their theater deals. There was like something that went
Yeah.
on. And so they're not premiering it at any theaters at all apparently. So only way you can
Ah,
watch it is on Netflix.
ah,
That is
that's
depressing.
that is because I definitely do want to see The Irishman in theaters, but I
Yeah.
guess I'll just make it a mini series now.
Yeah, most likely. That's what Tarantino did with like the Hateful Eight, and he's like apparently
Oh,
gonna do
right,
that
right.
with Hollywood, which is smart because like
Hmm.
like no one's gonna sit it around for like 4 hours.
Yeah, not unless he did the Kill Bill tactic and split it in half again. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's easier to just make a mini series out of your long movies.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting too because there he considers Kill Bill to be all one movie, and then there is a cut of the
Hmm.
movie, The Long Bloody Affair.
Hmm.
I've been meaning to watch solely because the one fight scene at the end of Volume One is all in color.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
So I've been meaning to watch that, but I just never got around to it.
Hmm.
But speaking
I.
of movies, I did get around to watching. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, Jalen, you're about to say something.
Oh, no, no, no. Go ahead.
I ruined it with my joke.
No, no. Go ahead. Go do your thing.
I saw Michael Mann's Thief, which came out in 1981.
Okay.
Michael Mann is known for movies like Heat and Collateral, two really great movies. Collateral being my
Hmm.
favorite movie of his I've seen so far.
Yeah.
Uh, and Thief I thought was really good. I really enjoyed it. Um, so basically, wait, did I say Heat or Thief? I'm getting these
Uh,
titles.
well, you did say Heat, but
I
I
did say
believe.
Heat. Yeah. So Thief. I'm talking about Thief, not Heat. Although Heat is great, you should watch it. So Thief is about this man. He's a professional burglar. He steals diamonds. Like like the opening scene in the movie, he's like drilling into a safe with just like the drill you can buy at Home Depot or something.
Hmm.
And so he's drilling into the safe in order to like steal these diamonds, and he steals the diamonds and he sells them.
Okay.
And so this is a man. He's been in prison since he was 21, and he got out 11 years later. And ever since he got out, all he's known is thieving and the criminal life. And now he's considering retiring. He finds a woman that he's in love with. He adopts a child, and he's doing his last. It's like one of those stories where, like the criminal's doing his last big game before he retires.
Right.
And so what this is just a character study of a man who just wants a simple life. Everybody wants that. They want to, do their work and then at some point retire. They want to, stay at home with their family, travel the world. What I
Hmm.
find so interesting about like crime movies, is that they're all, they're all about people who are above life, who like commit crimes and stuff.
Right.
And then, but they give them really relatable goals or it's like really relatable stuff. Like even if you look at The Godfather, it's a
Mm.
movie about the mafia. It's a movie that has killing and all types of like violent stuff. But yeah, it's a movie about family.
Right.
And so Thief follows through with that tradition of just following this guy who wants a simple life. And that gets kind of like messed with as he like starts like deal with the mafia. And later on like he's not able to follow through with it. And it's just a really interesting character study. I Main character, I forgot the actor's name, but so the actor who plays Sonny in The Godfather, plays the main character, and I thought he gave a fantastic performance. The score is like really stands out. There's like really nice like rock and synth score,
Okay.
which I thought was really cool. Which fits a lot with like Man's style. He makes very slick and cool movies, which
Mm.
I've always appreciated. So yeah, Thief. Check it out. It's a really great character study. One thing I will say is that it doesn't have the shootout you expect from Michael Mann. Like if especially if you come off seeing like Heat or Collateral, there's only really one big shootout towards the end, and it's nowhere near as big as his other shootouts are.
Right.
Um, Overall, like I said, fantastic movie with like a fantastic character study with a character that's like really relatable despite him being a criminal.
Okay. That's another movie by Michael Mann that I have to check out now. Um, just because, yeah, I haven't seen Heat yet either. But so this does sound interesting, right up my alley. I'm looking it up now. It's like, yeah, it looks pretty good.
It's on Amazon Prime if you have that.
Hmm.
So that's how I watched it, and yeah, I
Okay.
really enjoyed it.
I gotta check that out. In fact, I think Michael Mann, the only movie I've seen by him was The Insider, and
The
I had to watch
Insider.
that for class.
What
But
was that the one about the cigarette company?
yeah, yeah, with Russell Crowe and like
Yeah,
he was like the whistleblower.
gotcha. Yeah, I hear that's really good. I've been meaning to watch that too.
Yeah, that's another long movie that I probably won't rewatch, but I did love it though. Yeah, Thief. Yeah, I'll check that one out. Um, yeah, the only other thing I would watch this weekend, um, I didn't see any other movies. Like I went to go re-see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood again, but I won't talk about that. You guys know I love it already. But Dave Chappelle's latest stand-up special came out earlier this week, and it's been getting a lot of controversy. It's called Sticks and Stones, which I guess a lot of people missed that part of it. Um, I'll say like I thought it was straight up hilarious, but definitely the whole purpose of the whole setup or the whole set was for him just to pick at your bones and really say some foul and offensive things. Um, the only thing is that people are just saying, "Oh, he's only saying offensive things just to be offensive." It's like, no, it does have a point. He's actually poking fun at a lot of these values and these thought processes that certain people might have. Uh, for example, there's one joke where he talks about the whole Leaving Netherlands documentary and the whole Michael Jackson case with the two dudes. And he goes on about victim blaming, which it's a very hilarious joke the way he delivers it, but it's just like Dave Chappelle always does. It's he actually does have some truth behind this, and it is kind of ridiculous how people have this certain thought process. Um, the whole thing, the whole concept he tackles about cancel culture, where you'll go back to a certain celebrity's life, something they'll tweet out, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, and now you're going to use it against them now. It's like, it's kind of ridiculous. And I am glad somebody like Dave Chappelle was able to address that and kind of like point fingers at. I don't think they're the problem. I think you guys are the problem for not thinking that people can evolve.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's typical Dave Chappelle. What he does best is providing social comedy with great jokes. And yeah, if you're a fan of his comedy, I think you'll love this. I certainly did. I won't say it's like his best routine that he's done. Like I think the other two Netflix specials he's done were funnier than this, but this is hands down just hilarious. Um, excuse me. I had my whole family watching it with me. Like my mom, she really doesn't like a lot of crass humor, especially one that's pretty vulgar and offensive. But even she sat down for a while and started cracking up laughing at a lot of the punchlines here. So I think the film school moms, it gets her thumb of approval. I'll say that much.
Mhm.
Um, Overall, yeah, I thought it was a very funny stand-up set. It's on Netflix, so I'm pretty sure literally everybody in this country has Netflix at this point. Give it a watch, and if you still decide that you're offended by it afterwards, that's fair. But just give it another perspective. Not everything. You don't have to cancel every single person just because they say something that you don't agree with or something that you don't like. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's my little tangent about the outrage with this thing.
Yeah, I've yet to watch it, but I have heard about the outrage, and
Mm,
I see people defending it. I see people saying like, oh, what's Chappelle did was completely wrong. So it's definitely one of those things where you gotta just like watch it for yourselves and make up your mind.
right.
Hopefully at some point I'll see it. But yeah, I've heard some of the jokes and he said some interesting things. Obviously when you take something out of context, and you just say this is what the person said, or you're not getting
Mm,
the full story.
right.
There was one joke apparently he made about the N word and calling people the F word.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and so I'm interested in seeing that because like I've heard some people like that started up a huge conversation too, along with the Michael Jackson joke.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely got to check that out so I can have my own opinion on it.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Mm. Um, so also this week I saw another Netflix original, Bodyguard, starring Richard
Mm.
Madden, as we all know as the King of the North, Rob Stark.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I'm 4 episodes into the show, and so far I'm really enjoying it. I feel like the first 3 episodes are fantastic, and then once you get to episode 4, it kind of goes off into a different direction, which I found interesting, but it's a deviation from what I expected.
Mm.
So what you've got is Richard Madden. He's a police officer, but he's also a veteran of the British Army. So one day he's on the train with his kids, and he notices something suspicious. Someone suspicious goes into the bathroom. Talks like one of the stewardesses on the train, and he goes into the bathroom and he realizes there's someone in there with a bomb.
Mm.
And so he negotiates down the woman from detonating the bomb, and that whole scene, that scene as a whole is like it's really tense, but also like really well written.
Right.
Because instead of like like you see a lot of like scenes in movies like they're trying to like negotiate something down. But in this scene, he's as Richard Madden, as someone who is a veteran, he's talking to the woman as like someone he feels like he's been used by politicians to fight their wars, and they don't care about him as a casualty. They don't care what effect that has taken on him.
Mm.
And he's like, that's how he's like relating to this woman, and it's like it's really riveting stuff. And you see all the police officers that are there, they just want to shoot her and get her done with. But he's like actually they're like trying to sympathize with her because he understands what she's going through because he went through the same thing.
Right.
And so then after that, he gets promoted and he has to protect the Home Secretary of England. He looks into her, and she's like constantly pushed for more wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So
Mm.
now we have this veteran who's suffering with PTSD, who feels like he's just been a casualty of war that politicians don't care about, has to protect one of those politicians, and it puts him in this really interesting spot where even she says, like, I don't need your vote, I just need you to protect me,
Right.
and he doesn't agree with her at all, but he's put in these situations where he has no choice but to protect her because that's his job.
Mm.
And so, like I said, those first 3 episodes are just really touch on that, especially when you get like a lot of the scenes between the Home Secretary and Richard Madden's character. Because it's some really interesting stuff where you never know like what's gonna happen next because you can just tell this guy resents her,
Right.
and rightfully so. It's interesting too that I talk about this because there was like another controversy on Twitter because Twitter's always stirring something up.
Of course, as always.
Uh, you had Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson taking pictures with military personnel and
Mm.
posting, and it was all over on Twitter. And then people are saying, "Oh, how can you do that? How can you support the military?" And
Oh boy.
yeah, it's just really interesting because you look at stuff like this, it's like it's a lot of people are getting mad at them for supporting members of the military. Like, why would you get mad at them? It's not their fault that they're just following orders. They're just being told what
Yeah,
to do. If
exactly.
anything, you should be getting mad at politicians who send them off into wars that we shouldn't be getting into in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And this show directly deals with that. Like this is a man who's like suffering really terribly from PTSD. It's ruining his marriage, and he's like growing more distant from his kids.
Yeah.
And now he has to protect this politician who wants more award. And so it's just really interesting television. I recommend it. I just finished episode 4. I'm about to jump into the last 2 episodes. Last 2 episodes, they turn to Homeland, where now it's about like finding terrorists.
Okay.
Um, like I said, it's this weird deviation where I'd rather they focus more on the relationship between the Home Secretary and Richard Madden because that's where all the interesting drama is.
Right. Well,
So I recommend it. The reason I started watching it was because months ago Barry Jenkins talked about it on Twitter and he
mm,
praised it. And so if you like Barry Jenkins movies and you take his word seriously,
yeah.
you might like Bodyguard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love Barry Jenkins himself, but I wouldn't just take his word for it because it's also been nominated for like Golden Globes and Primetime Emmys, so it's definitely a critically acclaimed show, from what I'm
Right.
hearing.
Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's really good. So this is going to be all for today's episode of Film School Snobs. Pretty short episode. I think
Yeah.
our shortest one so far.
Mm,
So Jalen, where can people find you on social media?
very good. Find me on Letterboxd and Reddit at jmike127.
Okay. You can also find me on Letterbox at Alexander Zepeda, Zepeda. And then you can follow me on Twitter. Just look up Jedi Master Alex. And then follow us on Instagram at the Film School Snobs. And then you can also email us at thefilmschoolsnobs@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Later.